you're right, Jim. 50% of the country is getting a free lunch, but nobody wants a shit sandwich anymore.
I want to...
and that's what you're getting in terms of education, healthcare, and retirement, which are the three big drivers. Those are the things we need to attack and drive down and just overthrow.
Our closing panel, Are We Rome? Well, that's been the theme, of course, of the whole four-day Freedom Fest conference. Here to find out what our panel thinks, please welcome back the founder of Freedom Fest, Dr. Mark Skousen. Mark.
Thank you. Can you get me some water? Sure. Yeah, thank you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to put this book up here, Are We Rome, by Colin Murphy. I actually invited him to speak, but, you know, he's editor-at-large at Vanity Fair magazine. So, Nick, you know what that means. He's not to be found anywhere.
He's in rehab.
Yeah, he's in rehab. By the way, we have Nick Gillespie here, and we're delighted to have him up on the stage. We're hoping Senator Rand Paul will be joining us, but he has not appeared yet, so we're having Nick take his place. Certainly a welcome addition to our panel. And then we have next to him Wayne Allen Root. Now, what did Rachel Maddow call you the other night?
Oh, Rachel Maddow.
Rachel Maddow. Yeah. Sorry, I didn't pronounce.
Well, basically, she called me the most evil person in the whole world. So let's have a
Here
hand,
we have
folks.
it.
Come on.
The most evil person in the world. Yes, sir. Yeah. And Jenny Beth Martin from Tea Party Patriots. Yes. I'd imagine what Rachel Maddow would be saying about you. Who knows? She probably already has done so. And next to her, we have the most exciting personality at our conference, Mr. Steve Forbes. Wouldn't it be nice to say President of the United States 2 times in a row? And next to him, the man who would like to be king, Jim Rogers. All right. Now, since our theme is Are We Rome, I thought I would begin by testing some of the skills of our distinguished panel to see how knowledgeable they are on history. So the first one is a quote from Seneca. Now,
Seneca the Elder?
Seneca, he's already testing me, isn't he? Well, let me give you the quote and you tell me.
Yeah, I just exhausted my knowledge of classical Rome.
Well, actually, this quote probably applies to you, Nick, more than anyone else on the panel, except maybe Jim Rogers. So we're going to have both of you comment on this quote. There is no great genius without a touch of madness.
A touch?
A touch. Just a touch.
I have a lot more than a touch, I hope. I think that quote was from Joanne Skousen.
Oh, could be. Should I go on to the next quote?
Yes.
All right. So this is a quote about inequality, the fact that inequality seems to be eternal. Nothing can prevent some seats in the theater from being better than others.
That was definitely Joanne.
Chrysippus. I think actually a Greek said that. The Greek theater. And I think that kind of gets to the question of fairness in life.
Can I suggest it also gets to a question of technology? We don't have to go to the theater to experience drama or entertainment. And in the living room, actually, which is where more and more of the entertainment economy and the cultural economy is taking place, actually all the seats are pretty good. So just put an early marker down that we're not Rome, we're doing much better, because you can watch an endless number of movies, plays, information sources that were just unimaginable and unattainable even 15 years ago on a big screen TV for less money than you ever had to pay for that before.
You know, and that's a very good point, Jim.
But it's much better to see it live at Freedom Fest than to stay home and watch it.
Oh, good point. Good point. Let's see, I need to give, how many gold coins did... and you know, that's a good point. Some people come up to us and say, well, why don't you have live streaming? We had a number of groups coming, you know, we should have live streaming so that so many more people can enjoy this conference. You know the problem with that? You're not here. Now, how many of you have felt that this experience of Freedom Fest has meant a lot more to you because you were here than, say, a live streaming program? I mean, Jim feels that way especially.
Yeah,
all right.
I don't mean to, you know, I guess because I'm speaking in place of Rand Paul, I want to immediately turn towards pornography because I know the senator would be talking about that as well. But to speak to Jim's point, it's true. I mean, it's a different experience to be at something rather than watching it. So it's kind of similar. It's the difference between making love and watching pornography. And we should all be making love at Freedom Fest. Intellectual love.
You are speaking from experience, right?
You know, well, you know, I try to keep the porn days hidden, but, you know, it comes up.
See, Wayne, this is why we had you kind of pushing, we're having Nick on the end instead of you.
Yeah.
So,
at the risk of ending my political career, I'm making a statement. I am not getting near the topic of pornography, not at all. Okay, so...
All right, well, Jenny Beth, you haven't said anything so far. Let's see here if we can get a quote here for you.
It's good that we're in Vegas discussing this.
Now to get to something important. All right. How about this? Endless money forms the sinews of war. Anybody know who said that? Cicero. Senior or junior? There's only one. Gotcha.
Okay.
Gotcha. All right, so that's a very good libertarian theme, no? Anybody want to comment on the war theme? Jenny Beth Martin, are you pro-war or anti-war?
I think that we all are for being able to live without war, and we understand that human nature oftentimes results in war and in differences of opinion.
But you consider yourself a conservative, right? A conservative. That would be, if somebody said, what are you as the leader of the Tea Party Patriots?
I would say that I am a constitutionalist.
Okay, a constitutionalist. Very good.
But
Hey, Mark, can I mention something here?
Wayne Allen Root, please.
I may not be a fan of war. My name is War, by the way, Wayne Allen Root. But
war,
I'm not...
what is it good for? Absolutely nothing.
In this case, everything. But I may not be a fan of war, but I'm very much a fan of the people who fight war. I love the military, and one of the things that makes America now becoming Rome, one of the things that makes me sick to my stomach was if you looked at the news last week, we no longer have the money to have fireworks displays at military bases for the families of our heroes. We don't have the money for swimming pools to be open for the families of our heroes at military bases, and we don't have the money for jet flyovers at military graduation ceremonies, but we have the money for our emperor, Barack Obama, to spend $100 million to go to Africa and on Barack Obama Boulevard wave to his million fans and pledge $7 billion of our money to increase electricity access to, drumroll please, Africans. What the hell has happened to the United States of America? Wow.
Now, I can see.
Wow.
Steve Forbes, you have some good counsel on this. Tell us what, should we be honoring our military no matter what? If they're fighting a war in Iraq that you are against, or Afghanistan, that you think government has gone too far, should we be honoring these men, or should we treat them like we did the Vietnam vets?
Well, you just answered the question. We spat on the Vietnam vets when it was the people in Washington who sent them there. And that's the people who deserve the scorn, the people who sent them there, not those who went there. And as for war, sometimes there are real differences. Take our Revolutionary War. I'm glad we fought that one.
Now, do we have on our panel a veteran?
Were you
Yeah,
a
Jim Rogers.
enlistee?
Veteran.
Am I the only one?
Were you shot
Are you
at?
an enlistee or a draftee?
I think so.
I was about to be drafted, so I enlisted. so I could have my choice. But I want to tell you, Mark, I'm not the first to say, the first casualty of war is truth. There is no such thing in truth. It's truth when there's a war. Both sides lie. They make up huge lies. They put huge restrictions on their people. They send 18-year-old kids to kill each other. There's no such thing as good war. In one of my books I've written from... In one of the books I wrote for my children, I said to them, if you're in a country where that goes to war, just get out. Get out of there, because both sides are going to lie. You're going to be a victim of the war and the politicians who are going to destroy a lot of lives. Get out and go to a neutral country, because you look back over the past, 20,000 wars in world history, I don't think anybody except maybe Steve would say the American Revolution is justified, and maybe it is, but I'm saying there are very, very, very few wars that anybody can defend 100 years later or 300.
Can I also add, with all due respect to what Wayne was saying, and I agree actually with, I think, the consensus of the panel that soldiers, soldiers deserve to be honored and respected. The generals and the politicians who sent young men and young women to die, especially for no clear or compelling or important reason, as has been happening for the entirety of the 21st century, deserve our scorn for sure. There is always enough money to fight wars. And in fact, in the 21st century alone, the budget for the Pentagon essentially doubled in nominal terms. Currently the U.S. spends about 47% of all planetary expenditures on military. We can afford, if the Defense Department so wanted, they could afford to throw a couple of planes or fireworks displays for the soldiers who they say they exist for. We are spending far too much money on the military. The military is a bad investment. There is no military multiplier, and we would do well to get out of a perpetual warfare state.
Wayne?
But having said that, and I'm not disagreeing with Nick, because obviously I think there's waste everywhere. There's plenty of waste at the Pentagon, and we should be cutting across the board. But here's some food for thought. In the history of the United States of America, every war combined, I believe the number is we've spent $7 trillion from the American Revolution to today. The number for the war on poverty, the worst war ever fought, the most failing war ever fought, $15 trillion and counting. It is a massive failure.
Yeah. Right. But did we kill anybody in the welfare programs?
Oh, you killed
their spirit.
families.
You destroyed their spirit. You gave them the ability to not want to work.
You blighted tens of millions of lives. And as Jenny Beth made the point of, human nature is not changed. And if you're not prepared to defend yourself, others will come after you, even though it makes no rational sense at all. And I'm glad our grandfathers fought in World War II. I would rather have the stars and stripes than the swastika. Thank you very much.
So,
this is not like Jim's actual service in the military. My father was in World War II. He participated in the Normandy invasion and fought throughout Western Europe. And I am very grateful for that sacrifice that he and an entire generation made. He also told me that he would essentially break my legs if I ever thought about proactively engaging in war. And I think that's the right balance that we should strike as a free nation of free people.
So just by that, we're kind of surveying our panel here to see how down to earth you are. How many of you have had a friend or know someone personally or dealt with anyone personally on welfare?
How could you not in America? Everybody's on welfare.
Especially in the libertarian movement, it seems. But it's privately funded welfare.
By the way, it's important to note, as I mentioned in my opening speech on Wednesday, 101 million Americans, forget welfare, forget disability, forget unemployment, 101 million Americans are on food assistance versus 97 million that actually work in the private sector. The numbers are mind-numbing.
Everybody runs into, you heard the numbers. 101 million people, we all run into people on welfare every day, whether we know it or not.
Yeah,
I'm not on welfare. I wish I could get on welfare.
I think to go to what Steve, I think, was getting at, human nature doesn't change. And, if you give people something for nothing, you're going to get more nothing. I think one of the most troubling trends in a broad sense for me, again, just limiting to the 21st century, is a general decline in the workforce and the labor force participation rate. And the reason why fewer people are choosing to work is because they can. And that, you know, it doesn't mean that their costs of their lives that goes away, it just gets shifted to other people. It's a real serious issue, and we need to we need to make sure that we don't demonize people who are struggling and are getting assistance, whether it's publicly or privately provided, but we need to change our way of thinking so that everybody who can work is not only working, but is happy and is excited to work and is in an economy where they can actually grow and develop their talents in the best way possible.
So, Jenny Beth, the Tea Party movement, did it get started in reaction to a bloated welfare state, a bloated warfare state? What were the issues, and maybe we can connect it to problems that Rome faced in its decline. What was it that got you motivated to say, wow, I need to get involved?
Well, it's a bloated government period that started this movement. The stimulus bill in particular was for the modern day Tea Party movement what made so many people so upset. But the stimulus was on top of TARP, which was on top of bailouts, which was on top of No Child Left Behind and Medicare Part D. I mean, the list goes on and on and on and on. So it's out of control government. Welfare and talking about the assistance. I can talk about this in a way that probably a lot of people cannot. My husband and I had a business, and he had the business, and he was very, very successful for a while, and in fact employed 5,000 people. And he wound up ultimately losing everything, and he had signed personal guarantees, so we wound up having to file personal bankruptcy because of this. And this happened in 2008, and we lost everything, and we started over. And we had to file bankruptcy. And in America, you're allowed, there's a system. So when these things happen, you're allowed to do this and to start over and to rebuild. And that's what we started working on. Literally 2 or 3 weeks after we had filed, our bankruptcy had been finalized, and we're in the driveway of a house, at a rental house that we were looking at because we knew we had to start over. We get a phone call from our mortgage company offering us a Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac loan and saying they can bring us up to speed on our mortgage and then we could stay in it. We couldn't afford the house anymore. Who in their right mind gives somebody who just came out of bankruptcy a free loan? Our federal government. This is a huge problem. We turned it down. And when we turned that down, it was completely a private decision. I never knew I would be on national TV or in a room full of thousands of people discussing it. But we did it because we were so opposed to TARP. And in America, I'm not opposed to safety nets. And when you're worrying about how you're going to put food on your family for your children, you cannot understand the real fear and concern people have. And when there's a safety net there, it relieves some people's anxiety. For us, we knew we had succeeded, and we knew we could start over and do it again. And we have to have compassion, and we had compassion from our friends, and we had compassion privately, and we did what it took to start over.
Now, Jim Rogers, thank you. Jim Rogers, is what Jenny Beth told you totally foreign to your way of thinking? Once you are our expatriate representative here, and expat, as we would always call them, and you live in Singapore, you're a resident of Asia. Is this totally foreign to you? Is this why, one of the reasons you left the United States, because of the craziness of our laws?
Well, I still am an American taxpayer and an American voter, an American citizen. You cannot escape the IRS no matter where you go, no matter how hard you try, unless you want to risk going to jail. So yes, I live outside, but isn't it still legal for Americans to live where they want to? Have we become North Korea? Have we become Cuba? Are we not allowed to live where we want? Yes, I live abroad, and as I look at America from abroad, I'm not happy with what I see. Of course, that's one reason that I wanted my children to grow up in Asia. I want my children to know Asia because the 21st century is the century of Asia. Rome is in decline, and Asia's on the rise. I want my children to speak Mandarin, and they do speak Mandarin because that, in their lifetimes, will be very, very important. You know, China, the largest creditor nations in the world are China, Korea, Japan, Taiwan, Hong Kong, Singapore. The assets are in Asia. You know where the debts are. You can look out the window and see the debts. America's the largest debtor nation in the history of the world. Even Rome, at its worst, never got so deep in debt as we have gotten in this country, partly because of what we've heard about this during this panel, and it's getting worse, Mark. I mean, the title of this panel is "Are We Rome?" We've already outdone Rome. We're declining much faster than Rome did because we have an unlimited printing press, and if anybody needs a handout, we give them a handout. Even in Rome, at its worst, they never did that.
And Steve Forbes, you do a big conference every year in Asia. You know, I'm sure you don't spend all 4 days like you spend at Freedom Fest, but no, I'm sure you do at your conference in Asia. So why do you have a conference in Asia? Is there something special about Asia that you think the West is in decline like Rome, and so Asia is the place to be? And when are you planning to move to Singapore or Hong Kong?
We're heavily involved in Asia because it's a huge opportunity, especially with what the Chinese did in 1978, finally getting back to modernization, which was interrupted by the Japanese invasion in 1937. Deng made the change. Profoundly impressed by what happened in Singapore. Lee Kuan Yew is the hero of modern Asia. He showed the way, as did the Japanese in their own way. They've become stuck in recent times. But Asia is a very dynamic area. You'd be a fool to ignore it. But I think, and Europe is partially hopeless, but I have hope because of Central and Eastern Europe. And here in the United States, I think we underestimate our ability to regenerate ourselves. You could make a case in the 30s, especially when we passed the National Recovery Administration Act, the most fascist thing we ever did in this country. We had a Supreme Court that acted constitutionally then. But the 1970s were a horrific decade. We forget that. That's been expunged from the memory because the liberals caused it, so they have no desire to bring that disaster up again. And so I think you're going to start to see it again. The Tea Party was suppressed in 2012. Now we know it. Charles Murray is doing a book on the overreach in a very systematic way of of government and the hideous police things they're doing. When that information becomes aggregated, that's going to cause a profound change in public opinion. George Gilder's got a book out that I think revolutionizes economics. So we're setting the foundation, both in terms of theory and knowledge and self-awareness, and also in action. Combining theory and action, raising, as the Marxists would say, consciousness, you're going to see a profound change in the next 4 to 5 years. I think we're going to be pleasantly surprised at how quickly we're going to start to turn this thing around. Most people don't like where we are today. They just don't.
So, Jim, I assume that you have now been convinced by the great wisdom of Steve Forbes, and you are now becoming an optimist.
Nothing would make me happier than what Steve just said, but I would remind all of you that in the 30s and in the 70s, America was a creditor nation. In fact, the largest creditor nation in the world by the 70s. But now we're the largest debtor nation in the history of the world. As recently as 1987, we were still a creditor nation. That's only 26 years ago. And the debts are going higher and higher and higher. No country in world history that's gotten itself into this kind of situation has gotten itself out without a crisis or a semi-crisis. But I hope that Steve's right and I'm wrong.
Well, one of the nice things is while we have a lot of liabilities, we still are a nation with immense assets. Household wealth in this country is over $65 trillion. And I think that's a good foundation. How did we get out of the mess of the 70s? We did it by increasing the asset side of the nation's balance sheet. Even though Reagan spent a lot of money on the military, our debt more than doubled in the 70s, but we won the Cold War, in the 80s. But even though the debt went up 1.7 trillion when a trillion was real money, the net wealth of the nation went up 17 trillion. And so we'll release the dynamism of the American people, and we'll get out of these debts and unfunded liabilities. In health care, you get some real free enterprise in health care, and those unfunded liabilities come crashing down.
So Wayne Allen Root, are you an optimist or a pessimist?
Well, I'm a little bit of both. I'm an optimist and a pessimist. I agree and love Steve Forbes. I disagree with what's going to happen. I agree there's one way out of the mess. Things were almost as bad as now under Jimmy Carter. In comes Ronald Reagan. Massive tax cuts from
but the inflation is nowhere near that it was.
Agreed, but we're from the 70% range of taxes under Reagan to the 28% range. What did that mean? He didn't reward poor people. He didn't reward people that wanted welfare. The rewards went to small business owners. If you pay the taxes, you create the jobs. That's who you've got to reward. So where I agree with Steve is, we could turn this around tomorrow. If we replicated the Hong Kong economy with a 15% flat tax, keep your mortgage deduction, keep your charitable deduction, keep your business deduction, 0% capital gains tax, we turn around this company on a dime, this country on a dime tomorrow. Hong Kong right now, greatest economy in the world, booming, 3.5% unemployment. But we're not going to do that. We've got Obama as president, and it's not going to happen. And as a great man I know named Mark Skousen once wrote, how did Canada turn it around? They cut spending dramatically and cut taxes dramatically. You've got to reward the job creators and that small business, and this country will not do that with Barack Obama as President of the United States.
Nick.
Thank you.
I was going to say I don't necessarily disagree with that, but I also think part of getting out of a problem is diagnosing it properly. Everything that Barack Obama is doing, he is basically inheriting and extending George Bush's policies and the policies of a full-blown Republican government. It's really important to know that, including TARP. TARP, last time I checked, was a Bush disaster, not an Obama one. Not that Obama, turned that around or anything. The Republican Party, and I think conservatives in America, one of the things we have to understand, and this is something that Matt Welch and I talked about earlier this morning, is when you have the state grow so large that there is no escaping it unless you go to Singapore, and as Jim was saying, he's still on the hook for the American tax bill. I guess what you buy by leaving the country is you're not responsible for the damage we do, but you're still getting the check, right? Or at least your portion of it. But we need to understand that we need a rescission and not a return to Reagan, because Reagan is the apostle of deficit spending. There is no way around that. What we need is a government that lives within its means. It did not under Ronald Reagan. Debt went up. What we need now is a government that spends less and does less and allows the ultimate human resource, which is individuals and the groups they form and the companies they form, to move forward into the future.
Now, Steve, didn't Reagan justify the deficit because he was dealing with a heavily dominated Democratic Congress, or should he be blamed for never presenting a balanced budget in 8 years running the country?
Well, you can balance a budget by increasing taxes a lot, and I think we have to remember what Milton Friedman said. He would rather have a $1 trillion budget. This is obviously old. A $1 trillion budget that was badly out of balance than a $2 trillion budget in balance, because government is claiming a lot of resources. So we've got to avoid that trap. But again, the key thing is for this country is to liberate the mind, and it's already beginning. What George Gilder's book, Bringing Together Knowledge and Economics, what Charles Murray is doing in terms of the catastrophic overreach of government. Government is, and we should listen to Murray, government is going to be its own enemy. Why? Because it's such a muscle-bound leviathan. We're going to be starting to practice, Jenny Beth and others are going to do jujitsu on it, and we're going to turn that thing right upside down. And the way you attack government is not piece by piece like trench warfare. You start with the big stuff. Start with the tax code, huge source of power. Start with health care, huge source of power. Start with liberating education, which the web will help you do. You take the government out of taxation. You have private Social Security accounts. you have these basic fundamental reforms that most people will applaud because it gives them cheaper health care and the like, because entrepreneurs are let loose. You start to really whack the Leviathan, and you don't get in the trap the Republicans got in the mid-90s of fighting trench warfare, where you get shot up, gain a few yards, and then lose it again. And the combination, again, of theory and action is going to be very, very potent. Adam Smith did it in the late 1700s. Thomas Paine did it. A lot of theories out there. They brought it together, and the result was a positive revolution.
But Steve,
Now-
everybody in this
Hold on.
everybody in this room would agree with you and vote for that policy. But in America, more than 50% of the people get a free lunch. You think they're going to vote to have the free lunch taken away from them?
I'll tell you what.
Most Americans will still vote for opportunity, and one reason we got shellacked in 2012 is we didn't have candidates starting at the top who advocated what we're advocating here.
Right.
You don't advocate
Right,
it, you ain't
correct.
And
gonna
if
win
I
it.
can, just to bring some body language in, you're right, Jim, 50% of the country is getting a free lunch, but nobody wants a shit sandwich anymore.
I want to.
And that's what you're getting in terms of education, healthcare, and retirement, which are the three big drivers. Those are the things we need to attack and drive down and just overthrow.
Hey, Mark, just one sentence, literally. I'm
I'm
only
losing
jumping in for
control
one
of this
sentence.
panel.
One sentence. It's not getting better, folks. From January 1st to March 31st, 1 quarter, 3 months, 6,118 new regulations under the Obama administration. That's 68 a day. And then since then, it's gone to 72 a day. I'm a small businessman. There's no way to run a successful business in the United States of America anymore under Barack Obama. You just can't do it.
That's a perfect introduction to the next quote. The more corrupt the Commonwealth, the more numerous the laws, by Tacitus. And as you know, each year at Freedom Fest, we have a theme. Our theme this year is Are We Rome? I think we've done a great job of covering this. Next year, we've come up with a theme that I think you will all find interesting, and we have now a short video to anticipate what we're going to be doing next year. If you can play the video.
There we go.
I think that Are We Rome really resonated with the attendees at Freedom Fest. We had 2,200 people attending, plus all of those who came to the Stossel show. And with this theme, disappeared on us, but is Big Brother here? I think it also will resonate with the American people and people everywhere, because you can see, and Big Brother isn't just watching you, he's taxing you, he's regulating you, he's depreciating your currency, he is slowly strangling our freedom. So we've got to fight back, and that is going to be our theme next year at Freedom Fest, and we're very excited about it. So, Jenny Beth, would you like to respond to our video for next year, our theme?
You know, groups with Tea Party and Patriots have been targeted by the government and the IRS. Our organization, Tea Party Patriots, in the last 8 weeks has been on the front lines watching these things unfold and seeing the truly silencing effect that it has had. Citizens are afraid to speak out. They've silenced us. They did what they could to suppress us in 2012. And it's been it's frightening to see this happen in our country where we're supposed to be free. You said that the more corrupt, the more numerous the laws. And I want to say two things, that and something that Steve Forbes said. Steve said to go back to the root of the problem and go to the principle and attack the big thing. Our tax code, since the 1980s, we've had three taxpayer Bill of Rights. And those 3 taxpayer Bill of Rights did nothing at all to protect the Bill of Rights. Nothing. Our tax code is over 73,000 pages long. There's no way anyone... The IRS doesn't even know what's in those 73,000 pages. It's insane. And so Steve also said theory and action together raise consciousness, and people can take action. I think that's why we were targeted. Not just Tea Party Patriots, but 9/12 groups and groups that were studying the Constitution. We want a better country because we figured out the trick and the solution. And the reason we may be Rome, but I have hope for America, and that's why I'm fighting. Because our principles and the principles that made this country great will continue to sustain us and make us great and greater in the future as long as we understand what those principles are. And the people in this modern day liberty movement, that's what we are doing. We're teaching people about the principles of the Constitution and about freedom and the fact that DC or a central government, wherever it is, doesn't have to have all this control. And we threatened them. And we're going to continue to do it, and we're going to continue to fight for freedom, and because of that, we're not going to be Rome, we're going to be America.
Great, thank you very much. Thank you.
Steve.
And Mark.
And
Mark,
we will now have Jim Rogers, the last word for our panel, please.
No, well, I'm sorry, I don't want to be delayed. I would change the title, not Is Big Brother Here, to Big Brother Is Here, and I would reserve a section for him to come, because he's here.
Hey, Mark.
And Mark, you're being politically incorrect. You should have Big Sister too.
Oh, yeah. Whoa. We're going to have some trouble. Well, you know, a lot of people came and criticized our title, Are We Rome? Saying, no, we are Rome. But we like to put it in the terms of a question mark. We want to debate on this because there are arguments on the other side of these issues that saying, no, it's not Big Brother, it's something else. I don't know what it is, but there are arguments here, and so we always like to put it in the form of a question mark so that we can debate these subjects and so forth.
Hey, Mark. Mark, can I jump in? I wanted to jump in on Jenny's IRS point because I think that Jenny and the Tea Party groups need to understand that it wasn't Tea Party groups only that were audited, it was individual critics across the United States. I've been the subject of 2 vicious IRS audits, won them both, but not without a cost of tens of thousands of dollars to prove my innocence. And I think there were critics all over this country, and the goal of this administration is not just to shut down tea parties, but if you speak out, they want to destroy you, they want to intimidate you, they want to bleed you dry with legal fees, accounting fees, and they assume they'll find something that you'll owe, and suddenly there's no money left to give to conservative causes and GOP donors as well. And then the last point I wanted to make was, you keep saying, are we Rome, looking back to the old Rome. The average American gets an F in history. They don't know about it, they don't want to know about it, they don't care about it. It's better to compare us to Rome today. We are today's Italy, today's Greece, today's Spain, today's Portugal, today's France. We are bankrupt, they are bankrupt.
All right, well, I think you can turn it around just like Canada did. It just takes leadership, and that's what we lack in this country. And as far as getting audited by the IRS, we're going to have a whole session next year on the Obi-Wan Kenobi method of avoiding the IRS. You do not need to audit me. Oh, we will not audit them. That's what you need, the Obi-Wan Kenobi. I use it when I go through security. You do not need to check this person. Hey, let this person. Anyway, we'll have a lot of fun with this next year, and I hope you all will join us. I did want to mention a couple of other things that we want to do here. We want to have our raffle. As you know, we're giving away for 2 individuals get to come to Freedom Fest next year and have their expenses paid for. I don't know all the benefits, but it really, and we had a lot of people sign up for it, so we're going to draw that.
I'm going to smell a rat if it's Barack Obama and Janet Napolitano.
Well, if they're in there, we'll see if we can get them. We do have our conference in the Bahamas, which next year is February 6th through the 9th. It's called the World Financial Forum, or Summit, sorry. And it is meant to be the anti-Davos conference. They meet in freezing Switzerland. We meet in the balmy the Bahamas. We offer free market solutions to the world problems. So we're trying to build this event in February in the Bahamas as the alternative to Davos, the world forum that they have in Davos. We're also doing a cruise. We know a lot of people are interested in our cruise. It is starting in Singapore, where Jim Rogers lives, and then goes to Vietnam, up to Hong Kong, Taiwan, and Japan, and you can take side excursions to China if you wish. But we've had a lot of interest in that, so stop by the registration desk if you're interested. Regarding the video that you just saw that we'll be showing throughout the year, we will be posting that, and you can send it to all of your friends starting next week, and we hope you will spread the word. I think it's a really powerful video describing what our country faces. The other thing I want to mention was that a lot of work and effort has been put together at the staff, and normally at our Saturday night banquet we thank all our staff, but not all of you come to the banquet, so when you get a chance, please stop by the registration area and give a big thanks to Tammy Holland and her staff, the work that they put through, my wife Joanne and the Anthem Film Festival. Let's give them a big round of applause right now for everything they did to put this show together. Fantastic. Thank you very much. Thank you. Ah, great. Another announcement, Jim Rogers has just informed me that Laissez-Faire Books has, I think, a couple hundred more copies of Street Smart's Jim Rogers book. I think you mentioned that before, that it is available. And what time is the signing, do you know?
Now.
At 3:20. And as I said before, Street Smarts is, in my opinion, and it's not just my opinion, many people feel this is Jim Rogers' best book. It's just a wonderful description of the current state of affairs and his unique perspective, unique perspective on what's going on in the world, in Asia and the West and so forth. And he tells some great stories. I highly recommend that. Finally, the CDs are available not only for this conference, but we have the Best of Freedom Fest. If you would like to pick that up, see Harold over and his children and wife and so forth. They're all involved over there. So pick that up before you leave or sign up for it and it will be sent to you. I think I've covered everything except the drawing. And then once we do the drawing, I guess we can do that right now. But right after the drawing, we're going to pull these things down, and we're going to have a picture with all of our anybody who has a silver dollar, come on up. We're going to have our picture taken together. I know it's difficult to get the silver dollar, but for those who have them, bring it up here, show your silver dollar. We're going to take a picture, and we'll put that on the web to represent our symbol for liberty and sound money. Okay, so now, go ahead.
We're going to ask Jenny Beth to do the drawing, and I'll give one more turn of this. Remember, you have to be here to win.
What is the winning? Explain.
I'll do it again real quick. The winner gets tickets to next year's Freedom Fest, 4 nights in the hotel, VIP seats at our closing banquet, and a gorgeous 1-ounce gold coin, an 1874 beautiful 1-ounce gold coin. So with that, reach in there, stir them around. Have to be here. Okay, here we go. Bob Lynch from Seattle, Washington. Are you here? Okay. Come on up. Congratulations. Congratulations. Yeah. Let me get out of the way here. Yeah.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
All right, fantastic.
Okay.
We have next to him Wayne Allen Root. Now, what did Rachel Madoff call you the other night?
Oh, Rachel Maddow.
Rachel Maddow.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't pronounce.
Well, basically, she called me the most evil person in the whole world. So let's have a
Here
hand,
we have
folks.
it.
Come on.
The most
Yeah.
evil person in the world. Yes, sir. Yeah. And Jenny Beth Martin from Tea Party Patriots. Yes. I'd imagine what Rachel Maddow would be saying about you. Who knows? She probably already has done so. And next to her, we have the most exciting personality at our conference, Mr. Steve Forbes. Wouldn't it be nice to say President of the United States 2 times in a row? And next to him, the man who would like to be king, Jim Rogers. All right. Now, since our theme is Are We Rome, I thought I would begin by testing some of the skills of our distinguished panel to see how knowledgeable they are on history. So the first one is a quote from Seneca. Now,
Seneca the Elder?
Seneca the... Oh, he,
and we should all be making love at Freedom
Now,
Fest.
Nick,
Intellectual love.
You are speaking from experience, right?
I try to keep the porn days hidden, but, it comes up.
See, Wayne, this is why we had you kind of we're having Nick on the end instead of you.
Yeah.
So,
at the risk of ending my political career, I'm making a statement. I am not getting near the topic of pornography, not at all. Okay, so.
All right, well, Jenny Beth, you haven't said anything so far. Let's see here if we can get a quote here for you.
It's good that we're in Vegas discussing this.
Now to get to something important. All right. How about this? Endless money forms the sinews of war. Anybody know who said that? Cicero. Senior or junior? There's only one. Gotcha.
Okay.
Gotcha. All right, so that's a very good libertarian theme, no? Anybody want to comment on the war theme? Jenny Beth Martin, are you pro-war or anti-war?
I think that we all are for being able to live without war, and we understand that human nature oftentimes results in war. and in differences of opinion.
But
And
you consider yourself a conservative, right? A conservative. That would be
Good. So just put an early marker down that we're not Rome, we're doing much better, because you can watch an endless number of movies, plays, information sources that were just unimaginable and unattainable even 15 years ago on a big screen TV for less money than you ever had to pay for that before.
You know, and that's a very good point, Jim.
But it's much better to see it live at Freedom Fest than to stay home and watch it.
Oh, good point. Good point. Let's see, I need to give, how many gold coins did... and you know, that's a good point. Some people come up to us and say, well, why don't you have live streaming? We had a number of groups coming, you know, we should have live streaming so that so many more people can enjoy this conference. You know the problem with that? You're not here. Now, how many of you have felt that this experience of Freedom Fest has meant a lot more to you because you were here than, say, a live streaming program? I mean, Jim feels that way especially.
Yeah,
All right.
I don't mean to, you know, I guess because I'm speaking in place of Rand Paul, I want to immediately turn towards pornography, because I know the senator would be talking about that as well. But to speak to Jim's point, it's true. I mean, it's a different experience to be at something rather than watching it. So it's kind of similar. It's the difference between making love and watching pornography. You're right, Jim. 50% of the country is getting a free lunch, but nobody wants a shit sandwich anymore.
I want to...
and that's what you're getting in terms of education, healthcare, and retirement, which are the three big drivers. Those are the things we need to attack and drive down and just overthrow.
Our closing panel, Are We Rome? Well, that's been the theme, of course, of the whole four-day Freedom Fest conference. Here to find out what our panel thinks, please welcome back the founder of Freedom Fest, Dr. Mark Skousen. Mark.
Thank you. Can you give me some water? Sure. Yeah, thank you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to put this book up here, Are We Rome, by Colin Murphy. I actually invited him to speak, but, you know, he's editor-at-large at Vanity Fair magazine. So, Nick, you know what that means. He's not to be found anywhere.
He's in rehab.
Yeah, he's in rehab. By the way, we have Nick Gillespie here, and we're delighted to have him up on the stage. We're hoping Senator Rand Paul will be joining us, but he has not appeared yet, so we're having Nick take his place. Certainly a welcome addition to our panel. And then he's already testing me, isn't he? Senator? Well, let me give you the quote, and you tell me.
Yeah, I just exhausted my knowledge of classical Rome.
Well, actually, this quote probably applies to you, Nick, more than anyone else on the panel, except maybe Jim Rogers. So we're going to have both of you comment on this quote. There is no great genius without a touch of madness.
A touch?
A touch. Just a touch.
I have a lot more than a touch, I hope. I think that quote was from Joanne Skousen.
Oh, could be. Should I go on to the next quote?
Yes.
All right. So this is a quote about inequality, the fact that inequality seems to be eternal. Nothing can prevent some seats in the theater from being better than others.
That was definitely Joanne.
Chrysippus. I think actually a Greek said that. The Greek theater. And I think that kind of gets to the question of fairness in life.
Can I suggest, it also gets to a question of technology. We don't have to go to the theater to experience drama or entertainment. And in the living room, actually, which is where more and more of the entertainment economy and the cultural economy is taking place, actually all the seats are pretty